Hi everyone, I'm Kaylee Bushell, and today I'm going to be talking about the evolution of tokenomics, from capturing value to creating lasting value and what that means. So before I get started, a little bit about myself. Before I got into the space, I was in traditional finance and got involved in crypto through the DeFi side of things, seeing what could be built, these different products that can be built in the DeFi space that you can't build in traditional finance. Currently, I'm Chief of Staff at Decentology, which is a developer tooling company. We focus on building products for Web2 devs to start building in Web3 without needing to know any smart contract code. I'm also a product at Tokenomics, which is a gated NFT studio. I've been an angel investor in the space. Previously, was at Idle DAO, contributing on the finance and biz dev side of things, and just all around been in the space advising at protocols and projects around tokenomics and strategy. So there's a lot when we look at tokenomics and think about tokenomics. There's just a lot of different stuff in the space, a lot of, we see so many different projects going about it different ways, but some of the main things I like to think about and question when I look at projects is, number one, how to create lasting value for users, and what does that mean, and what does capturing value mean, and how protocols are going about this. Number two, how to bootstrap a community with a token, and really how to maintain that community and create lasting value within your community. Number two, does your project need a token? We've seen so many projects that don't have tokens that are very successful, projects that have tokens that haven't been as successful, and some projects that have launched tokens later on in the form of an airdrop or in other ways that have been successful and not been successful. So just talking about that and what that means. So basically, in FAT protocol thesis, I know this has been talked about from a lot of big players in the space. Read about this initially from Sammy, which he touched on this, but the main idea is when you look at Web2, you see a lot of value is being trapped. A lot of value is produced at the protocol level, but the actual value got captured in the application layer, like Google, Facebook. So if you were an investor in the space, if you invested in Google, Facebook, or the applications, you actually made a lot more money than investing in the protocol layer. But in Web3, we see this as flipped, which is where the FAT protocol thesis comes in. We see the FAT protocols and thin applications, which is, you look at all the L1s and L2s, there's so much more value there is if you're investing within the protocol level. I mean, the market cap is just so much higher in the L1s and L2s versus the application layer. So something to think about, what we're seeing this evolution, from Web 2 to Web 3, where value is being stored and, how protocols are going about, their tokenomics and thinking of this and what we're seeing in the space. So creating lasting value, I mean, this has been a big topic within, these ideas, but first off, I mean, what is capturing value? What does creating value mean? So capturing value is essentially a closed loop system, meaning that, everything is trapped within your own ecosystem, your incentives, value, governance, everything's within that ecosystem. One example to point out is sushi. For example, you look at sushi's model. If I, have sushi, if I hold the token of sushi, I can take sushi, stake it, and receive X sushi in return. So essentially, you are, trapping value within that protocol. And what they're doing is they're making it so you're not selling sushi, it's locked up within sushi, and in turn it's a closed loop system, value, incentives, and all that is within their ecosystem. Another example of this is we've seen this model the past few months, and another, abracadabra, which is, they're instituting, they're just buying back their tokens. So that's just another example of closed loop system, and how that's capturing value rather than creating value, which is the opposite, I'd say, which is an open loop system. So what you're doing there is creating value for other ecosystems, and the reliance on external factors. So you have other protocols building on top of your ecosystem. You have other protocols utilizing your token for other, for other resources for their own good, and again, adding to that open loop system. And I guess one of the prominent examples of this is Curve. We all read about Curve, the Curve wars back in the day, and how Curve is making it so there's so much demand for VE Curve and their token for all these other protocols. They're fighting over Curve and creating that open loop system and actually creating value. And of course, another example is Ethereum with the open loop system as well. So yeah, just diving more into Curve and how we see what Curve is building, and just a case study of what we see with Curve is essentially the base plate, as I talked about earlier with the FAT protocol thesis, and that whole idea is Curve is the base plate and the other dApps are really the Legos on top. And yeah, just diving deeper into this idea of creating value. So what Curve is doing is they're making it so other protocols are essentially fighting over liquidity, and protocols need to get VE Curve to direct liquidity to their protocol, and then in turn they're able to decide. Curve doesn't decide the use cases for its token, rather the protocols do, meaning that the protocols are able to use that liquidity how they want, direct, or again, utilize Curve how they want. So, again, the open loop system where Curve is, or they're able to direct governance how they want, direct, a lot of different things in the space. So again, what Curve is doing is they're creating an open loop system, making it the base place for others, and this is how they structured their tokenomics, and creating a lot of demand for the outside ecosystem. Okay, and I guess the third question to touch on, I talked about the whole idea of creating value, base plate, FAT protocol thesis, and just how Curve is doing that, how other communities are doing that. But another question to touch on within tokenomics is, are tokens really needed? We've seen so many, especially in this market, we've seen so many innovative ideas. You look at Olympus, bonds and service, a very innovative idea, but in terms of the token, we've seen so many tokens come down, and tokens don't have utility in the sense where, they tie into the innovative ideas, and when the token dumps, then the project is essentially, not looked at in the same light. And then also just thinking about how tokens, the type of utility for tokens, what is your token going to be used for? I think we see, a lot of projects really pushing to have a token, but, it ends up just being a governance token. There's not much utility, or there's no need for the token initially. And we've seen this with projects, although we have seen projects where governance tokens can be very powerful. It's just about, bootstrapping the community and really seeing what your project needs and where your project is headed, and, what I guess is the roadmap for your project. And another thing to think about is timing. We've seen projects that haven't had tokens, or just never had tokens, like Arbitrum hasn't had a token. And they don't have a token, so it's one thing they don't have to worry about when it's just they're focused on the ecosystem, they're focused on the dApps built on top, and they don't have to worry about the value of their token. And especially in this market, that's one thing they don't have to focus on right now. And maybe it's a timing thing, like we saw Optimism later on have an airdrop. ENS had an airdrop, and it was positive for the community. They were able to build up the community that way and figure out what was the utility for their token and what they needed for their community. So something to think about on timing and are tokens needed, but also what is your token going to be used for, I'd say. So yeah, that's a little bit about tokenomics rundown, about thoughts about creating value versus do you need a token, bootstrapping, community, and thank you for your time.